In March 1943, following a public outcry, the Bulgarian authorities seized the deportation and the inevitable death of nearly 50,000 Bulgarian Jews in the Holocaust. Bulgaria remains the only member of the Axis who does not send their citizens of Jewish faith to the death camps in occupied Poland. In this edition of the research paper, we're going to closely examine this outstanding act of goodness. We will look into the sequence of events, the historical, cultural, and political context of the time. But ultimately, we will try to identify the answer to the question, who were the people responsible for the rescue of the Bulgarian Jews? The real problems for the Bulgarian Jews begin around the time when Bulgaria joins the Axis. So let's take a look at the reasons why the Bulgarian government makes that decision. Bulgaria became independent from the Ottoman Empire in 1878, but after the Congress in Berlin later that summer, the newly independent Bulgarian state was left separated, not receiving all of the territory it desired, and leaving significant numbers of ethnic Bulgarians outside of national borders. Since then, unifying all ethnic Bulgarians and territories in one national country shaped Bulgaria's political agenda in the next couple of decades. The Bulgarian national question, as historians refer to the unification plans today, was the reason Bulgaria got involved in the First and Second Balkan Wars, as well as World War I. Unfortunately, the Bulgarians suffered a defeat in all of them, declaring a national catastrophe and ultimately losing even more territory. In the 1930s, under the rule of the new king Boris III, Bulgaria became closer with its traditional ally Germany and got back some of the territories it lost, indicating Hitler's willingness and ability to help Bulgarians solving their national question. But bringing those territories back wasn't the only reason why Bulgaria gave up its neutrality and joined World War II on the Axis side. Nazi Germany had already imposed pressure on the country to make a decision. Although Bulgaria was closer to Germany, the Bulgarian king explored all opportunities at the time. In January 1941, he met with Colonel William Donovan, chief of U.S. intelligence and a special envoy of U.S. President Roosevelt in Sofia. Boris sought assurance that the Allies would resolve the Bulgarian national question, but none were given. In the meantime, the victorious German army was already standing on the northern border of Bulgaria, awaiting to pass through the country in order to get to Greece. Bulgaria had to decide whether it wanted to be an ally or to suffer the devastating consequences of being occupied by Germany. The king made a decision. In March 1941, Bulgaria joined the Axis. Although they let the Germans pass through their territory, the king refused to send any Bulgarian soldier on the battlefield. Bulgaria, however, had to somehow show its loyalty to the Axis, especially after the Nazis gave back to them the occupied with Bulgarians Macedonia and Thrace. The same year, under the direct influence of Nazi Germany and despite the protests of the Bulgarian public, the Bulgarian government passed into legislation the Defense of the Nation law, in which the civil and property rights of the Jews were being taken away. In his diaries, King Boris' advisor Lyubomir Volchev tells us what the king shared with him about the law. "I have postponed this a lot, and I did not want us to do it, but now, when they have it in Romania, Hungary, and even in France, I have decided that it's better for us to make our own version of the law, instead of being imposed by them." Loosely implemented, the bill did not have the same effect on the Bulgarian Jews as the Nuremberg laws that were in the Third Reich. The Nazis, however, wanted to begin the implementation of the final solution themselves as soon as possible. In January 1943, the SS Hauptsturmführer and one of Adolf Eichmann's closest associate, Theodor Denneker, arrived in Germany to orchestrate with Alexander Belev, the chief of the Commissary of Jewish Affairs in Bulgaria, the deportation of the Bulgarian Jews. First, they began with the Jewish people from former Greek and Yugoslavian territories. Even though Bulgaria was now administrating these territories, the Germans were the ones who had the final say. In the winter of 1943, 11,000 Jews from southern Thrace and Macedonia were put on the trains and deported to Poland. As the trains loaded with Jews were passing through the territories of old Bulgaria, rumors about what was going on started circulating around the country. Denneker and Belev now wanted to deport the rest of the 50,000 Bulgarian Jews from the old parts. Arrests began on March 4, 1943. A massive public outcry follows, opposing the deportation. On March 9th, Interior Minister Gabrowski stopped the arrest and deportation of Jews from old Bulgaria, after receiving a nod of approval from the highest place. At this time, highest place referred to the king. In June 1943, the German ambassador wrote to Germany, disgusted that the Bulgarians had lived for too long with peoples like Armenians, Greeks, and Gypsies to appreciate the Jewish problem. Another German official in Bulgaria, Karl Hoffmann, complained at the same time that the Jewish question does not exist in Bulgaria in the sense that it does in Germany. The ideological and racial prerequisites for convincing the Bulgarian people of the urgent need for a solution of the Jewish question, as in the Reich, are not to be found here. After 2 months of uncertainty, the Jews returned to their homes. Hitler was furious. At their meeting on August 14, 1943, Hitler demands from Boris the deportation of all Bulgarian Jews. Boris calmly told the German leader Bulgaria needed the Jews for labor projects. Hitler and Boris compromised on having all Jewish men relocated to labor camps in Bulgaria. This order affects 20,000 men, but none of them was deported outside of Bulgaria. 2 weeks later, Boris suddenly dies. Doctors conclude he was poisoned. The rescue of the Bulgarian Jews was a miraculous event, but who should take credit for it? Was there an enigmatic figure like Mr. Schindler that we should later make a movie about it? Or there was something much more? As part of the public outcry, many Bulgarian intellectuals, organizations, and even ordinary citizens joined the protest. There were protest letters sent by artists, journalists, lawyers, merchants, artisans, all of them trying to convince the king to protect the Bulgarian Jews. One of the major actors in these events was indeed the Bulgarian Orthodox Church. They were the first organization to outspokenly condemn the actions of the Bulgarian authorities against the Jews. There's even more. From the very beginning, the Bulgarian Orthodox Church protested the defense of the nation law. Metropolitan Stefan was the most outspoken opposition of the anti-Semitic legislation. When he heard about what was happening in Macedonian Thrace in early March 1943, Metropolitan Stefan immediately traveled to the king's palace, with whom he had a firm relationship, asking for anti-Jewish decisions to be postponed. Under his rule, the Bulgarian churches opened their doors to Jewish refugees. Hundreds of thousands of Jewish baptismal certificates were forged to portray them as Christians and save their lives. In March 1943, 1,500 Jews were said to be deported in the city of Plovdiv. The local metropolitan Kirill succeeded in preventing it. Kirill even threatened to lie across the railroad tracks in order to stop the deportation. In the events of March 1943, a very important role plays the vice chairman of the Bulgarian Parliament, Dimitar Peshev. Let's see what happens when a couple of his fellow citizens from the city of Kyustendil come to him with a very special and urgent request. On March 8, 1943, the delegation marched into Dimitar Peshev's office. One of the delegates, Peshev's Jewish friend Jacob Baruch, informed him of the government's plan to deport the Jews. On the next day, Peshev went into the Interior Minister's office in Sofia and demanded to halt deportation and arrests in his hometown of Kyustendil. By the end of the day, everything was put on hold. Peshev's actions continued even further. On March 17, he sent an official letter to the Prime Minister Bogdan Filov, signed by 43 members of the parliament, protesting the arrests of the Jews. The deputies were all from the majority. The Bulgarian Communist Party plays a very important role in these events. At the beginning, they are against the Bulgarian government's decision to impose anti-Semitic laws. They write hundreds of articles against that. But after 1944, where the communist regime is established, things change. Philosopher Tsvetan Todorov, in his book Fertility of Goodness, analyzes the actions of the communists during that time. He says that after September 9th, when the communist regime took power, there were two mutually contradicting answers to the question. First, what happened was not all important, and second, the Communist Party deserves all the credit for this glorious achievement. Indeed, in the People's Tribunal, which the communists created to persecute their political opponents, many of the rescuers of the Bulgarian Jews were persecuted, jailed, or killed for being fascist and anti-Semitic. Dimitar Peshev was sentenced to 15 years of prison. Metropolitan Stefan was relieved from his duties, and Ekonomov and other intellectuals who first sounded the alarm were executed. For many years, the role of the Bulgarian king Boris III was a subject of debate. But after the fall of the communist regime, newly revealed documents gives us the opportunity to look at his decisions, actions, his mindset, and maybe even revisit his image. As the head of state, King Boris had the final say about the fate of the Bulgarian Jews. With ordering to stop the deportations on March 9, 1943, there were several other occasions where Boris tried to delay action on the Jewish question as much as possible. From convincing Hitler he needs the Bulgarian Jews in his country for road maintenance, to relocating Bulgarian Jews to the province instead of deporting them to Poland, and signing hundreds of transit visas to Jews to reach Palestine, cooperating with representatives of the Bulgarian Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church. According to one of Boris' close advisors, Petr Gruev, Boris did not seem to have anti-Semitic views despite his public rhetoric. Indeed, Boris was famous for skillfully using his words by seemingly saying a lot without actually saying nothing. Boris and his family also had many friends from the Jewish community in Bulgaria: merchants, dentists, tailors, religious leaders. In terms of his actions regarding the Jews in Thrace and Macedonia, some historians blame Boris for their death because he refused citizenship to the Bulgarian Jews based on the law for defense of the nation. But others praise him as a hero who had done everything legally possible to save them. Along with her husband, Queen Giovanna of Bulgaria also takes a significant part in this, which is quite unusual for that time. Queen Giovanna also shared disgust with the actions of the Nazis against the Jews. Through her Italian connections, she helped Italian foreign-born Jews living in Bulgaria by issuing them passports. She tells the Italian ambassador, Graf Magistrati, this: "I immediately need Italian passports for several Jews. They're not going to stay in Italy. I need just transit visas so they can go to Argentina." The ambassador has no choice but to assist her. Unlike the rescue of 1,500 Jews in Denmark and those by Schindler, in the rescue of the Bulgarian Jews, we can't just name one hero. This was a national cause. With the national mentality of tolerance and acceptance, and the collective effort of all members of the Bulgarian society, from the ordinary citizens of Kyustendil who want to save their Jewish neighbors, to different national professional organizations, leaders of the Orthodox Church, members of Parliament, political parties, and last but not least, the Bulgarian head of state. All of those 50,000 lives would have been lost.